What happens when one of Hollywood's brightest stars sits down for what should be a routine interview and everything goes completely sideways? When respect turns to tension, when questions cross lines, and when a conversation spirals so far out of control that it ends with an empty chair and a stunned studio audience. This is the story of the day Zendaya walked off The View, and trust me, you need to hear every single word of what led to that moment. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this one is wild from start to finish. The View's iconic round table sat under the bright studio lights, cameras rolling as the show returned from commercial break. The audience applauded as the co-hosts settled into their seats, and Zendaya sat poised in the guest chair, a calm smile on her face. Joy Behar leaned forward, her expression friendly but with that edge of mischief she's known for. Joy started things off casually. "So, Zendaya, we're thrilled to have you here. You've had such an incredible career, and you're so young. I mean, when I was your age, I was still figuring out how to pay rent." Zendaya laughed politely. "Well, I think we all have our own timelines, you know? I've been really fortunate with the opportunities I've had." Joy nodded, but there was something in her tone that shifted. "Fortunate, sure, but let's be honest. You've also been very strategic about your image. Very careful. Some might say, maybe too careful?" The other co-hosts exchanged glances. Sunny Hostin raised her eyebrows slightly, and Sarah Haynes shifted in her seat. Zendaya's smile remained, but her eyes sharpened just a fraction. "I wouldn't say too careful," Zendaya replied evenly. "I'd say intentional. There's a difference between being careful and being thoughtful about how you present yourself and what you stand for." Joy waved a hand dismissively. Right. Thoughtful. But don't you think that sometimes all that control makes you seem a little, I don't know, distant? Like we don't really know who you are?" Zendaya's posture straightened slightly. "I think people know who I am through my work. I've been pretty open about the things that matter to me. Just because I don't share every detail of my personal life doesn't mean I'm being distant. It means I'm setting boundaries." Sunny jumped in, clearly trying to steer the conversation. "I think that's actually really healthy, especially for someone who grew up in the spotlight." Joy cut her off. "Oh, come on, Sunny. We all grew up somewhere. But when you're a public figure, especially one who's making millions of dollars, don't you owe the public something? Don't they deserve to know who you really are?" Zendaya's jaw tightened, though her voice remained controlled. "I owe the public my best work. I owe them honesty when I speak about issues I care about. But I don't owe anyone access to my private life. That's not part of the job description." Joy leaned back, crossing her arms. "See, that's interesting. Because a lot of people would argue that when you take on certain roles, when you become a role model for young people, you do take on certain responsibilities. You can't just pick and choose what parts of fame you want." The audience was quiet now, the energy in the room shifting. Alyssa Farah Griffin cleared her throat. "I think what Zendaya is saying is that there's a difference between being a role model in your professional life and having to share every personal moment." Joy turned to Alyssa with a sharp look. "I know what she's saying, Alyssa. I'm asking her if she thinks that's fair to the fans who support her, who buy tickets to her movies, who follow her every move." Zendaya's voice was firmer now. "My fans support me because of the work I do. They support me because I try to use my platform for good. And yes, I share parts of my life with them. But I'm also a human being who deserves privacy. That's not unfair. That's basic respect." Joy scoffed. "Basic respect. Okay, so what about when you're photographed out and about? What about when you're on red carpets? You're controlling the narrative there too, aren't you? Making sure everything looks perfect?" Zendaya blinked, clearly taken aback by the tone. "I mean, yes. I think about how I present myself in public. Most people do. I don't understand what you're getting at." "What I'm getting at," Joy said, leaning forward again, "is that you've built this pristine image, this perfect, untouchable brand. And I'm wondering if that's really authentic, or if it's just good PR. The other co-hosts looked visibly uncomfortable now. Whoopi Goldberg, who had been mostly quiet, started to speak. Joy, I think maybe we should... No, no, Joy interrupted. I want to know. Because we've seen this before, right? Young stars who seem perfect until they're not, and then everyone's shocked. So I'm asking, Zendaya, what are you hiding? Zendaya's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, there was a flash of real anger in her expression. I'm not hiding anything, and I really don't appreciate the implication that I am. I've been nothing but professional and honest in my career. Joy shrugged. Hey, I'm just asking questions. That's what we do here. If you can't handle a tough question, maybe you're not as ready for the spotlight as you think. The audience gasped audibly. Sunny's mouth dropped open. Sarah put a hand to her forehead. Whoopi looked at Joy with clear disapproval. Zendaya's voice was ice now. I can handle tough questions just fine, Joy. What I can't handle is disrespect disguised as journalism. You're not asking me about my work. You're not asking me about anything substantive. You're just trying to provoke me. Joy laughed, but it was harsh. Provoke you? Please. I'm trying to have a real conversation, but if you want to sit there and act like you're above being questioned, that's on you. I never said I was above being questioned, Zendaya shot back. But there's a way to ask questions that's respectful, and there's a way to ask them that's condescending. And you've been condescending since the moment I sat down. Whoopi finally cut in firmly. Okay, I think we need to take a breath here. Joy ignored her. Condescending? I'm being honest. Maybe you're just not used to people being honest with you. Maybe everyone around you just tells you how great you are all the time. Zendaya stood up abruptly, her mic pack still attached. You know what? I came here to talk about my work, to talk about things I care about. I didn't come here to be insulted. And I'm not going to sit here and let you talk to me like this. Joy held up her hands in mock surrender. Oh, here we go. Can't take the heat. So you're walking out. Very mature. It's not about heat, Zendaya said, her voice shaking slightly with controlled anger. It's about dignity, and I'm not going to compromise mine to satisfy whatever point you're trying to make. The studio was dead silent except for the sound of Zendaya unhooking her microphone. A producer rushed forward from the side of the stage, hands outstretched in a calming gesture, but Zendaya was already placing her microphone pack on the chair. The other co-hosts sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. Joy, however, wasn't backing down. So that's it? Joy called out, her voice cutting through the tension. You're just going to run away? This is what happens when you challenge someone who's never been told no. Zendaya turned back, and the look on her face was pure steel. I've been told no plenty of times in my life, Joy. I've faced rejection, criticism, and obstacles that you couldn't begin to understand. But what I won't accept is being disrespected on national television by someone who's supposed to be a professional. Whoopi stood up now, trying to mediate. Zendaya, please, let's just take a moment. We can reset this conversation. Zendaya shook her head. With all due respect, Whoopi, I don't think we can, because this isn't about a conversation going wrong. This is about Joy deciding, before I even sat down, that she was going to treat me like I'm some kind of fraud. That's not true, Joy protested, though her tone suggested otherwise. I treat everyone the same way. I ask hard questions. That's my job. No, Zendaya countered, her voice rising slightly. Your job is to interview people, to have meaningful discussions. What you're doing is making assumptions about me, questioning my authenticity, and suggesting I'm hiding something without any basis for it. That's not journalism. That's just mean. Sunny finally spoke up, her voice tentative. Joy, I think maybe Zendaya has a point. Some of those questions did come across as pretty aggressive. Joy spun to face Sunny. Oh, so now you're going to pile on too? I'm the bad guy for not treating her like she's precious? I never asked to be treated like I'm precious, Zendaya interjected sharply. I asked to be treated with basic respect. The same respect you'd give any other guest. Joy laughed bitterly. You want to talk about respect? Let me tell you something about respect. I've been doing this for decades. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, celebrities who actually have something to say. And you want to come in here, barely out of your 20s, and tell me how to do my job? The audience murmured uncomfortably. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Alyssa tried to speak, but Joy was on a roll. You're part of a generation, Joy continued, that thinks everything should be easy, that thinks you should be able to control everything, curate everything, and never face real pushback. Well, that's not how the real world works. Zendaya's hands clenched at her sides. Don't talk to me about the real world. I've been working since I was a child. I've dealt with racism in this industry, sexism, people doubting me at every turn. I've had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. So don't stand there and act like I don't know what the real world is like. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Whoopi cut her off firmly. Joy, stop. Right now. This has gone too far. Joy turned to Whoopi with indignation. Are you seriously taking her side? I'm not taking anyone's side, Whoopi said, her voice heavy with authority. But I am saying that you crossed a line, multiple lines, and you need to acknowledge that. Joy's face flushed red. I'm asking the questions that viewers at home are thinking. Someone has to be willing to push back against these carefully constructed celebrity personas. Zendaya stepped closer to the table, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. You want to talk about personas? What about yours? The brash, tell it like it is comedian who thinks being rude is the same thing as being real? You hide behind this act like it gives you permission to say whatever you want without consequences. The studio went completely silent. Even the cameras seemed to stop moving. Joy's eyes widened in shock. Excuse me? Joy's voice was dangerously quiet. You heard me, Zendaya said, not backing down an inch. You want to question my authenticity? Let's talk about yours. Because from where I'm standing, you're using this platform to bully someone half your age because it makes good television, and you're calling it honesty. Joy stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I am not a bully. Don't you dare call me a bully. Then what do you call what you've been doing for the past 10 minutes? Zendaya demanded. You've questioned my integrity, my authenticity, suggested I'm hiding things, and now you're acting like you're the victim because I'm standing up for myself? Alyssa finally found her voice. Guys, please, can we all just calm down for a second? No, Joy snapped. I'm not going to calm down. I'm not going to sit here and be accused of bullying by someone who can't handle basic scrutiny. Basic scrutiny? Zendaya's voice was incredulous. You literally asked me what I'm hiding. You implied that my entire career is fake. You questioned whether I deserve the success I've worked my entire life for. That's not scrutiny, that's an attack. Sunny stood up too, positioning herself slightly between Joy and Zendaya. Okay, I think we need to end this segment. We need to go to commercial. No, Joy said firmly. We're not going to commercial. We're going to finish this conversation like adults. There's nothing to finish, Zendaya said, her voice suddenly calm and cold. You've made it clear what you think of me. You've been disrespectful, dismissive, and honestly, kind of cruel. And I'm not going to stand here and take it just because you have seniority or because this is your show. Whoopi moved toward Zendaya, her hand extended. Zendaya, I am so sorry. This is not how we conduct interviews here. This is not who we are. Zendaya looked at Whoopi with genuine sadness in her eyes. I appreciate that, Whoopi. I really do. But the damage is done. I came here in good faith, and I was ambushed. And I think the worst part is that Joy doesn't even see what she did wrong. Because I didn't do anything wrong, Joy insisted, though her voice had lost some of its edge. I asked tough questions. If you can't handle that, maybe you're not cut out for this level of fame. Zendaya laughed, but there was no humor in it. You know what's funny? I've done hundreds of interviews. I've been asked tough questions about my race, about my age, about my relationships, about my choices, and I've answered them all with grace, because they were asked with respect. But what you did today wasn't tough questioning. It was a performance. You wanted a moment, and you got one. I hope it was worth it." She turned and started walking toward the edge of the stage. The producer stepped forward again, speaking in hushed, urgent tones, but Zendaya shook her head. Joy called after her, "You're really going to walk out? You're going to prove me right about your generation not being able to handle criticism?" Zendaya stopped and turned back one last time. "I'm not walking out because I can't handle criticism. I'm walking out because I refuse to participate in my own disrespect. There's a difference. And if you can't see that, then that says everything about you and nothing about me." Sarah was wiping tears from her eyes now, clearly emotional. Sunny looked furious, her arms crossed tightly. Alyssa stared at the table. Whoopi stood with her hands on her hips, looking at Joy with deep disappointment. Joy, for the first time, seemed to falter. She sat down heavily, her expression confused, as if she genuinely couldn't understand how things had gotten to this point. Zendaya took a deep breath, composing herself. To the audience, to Whoopi, Sunny, Sarah, and Alyssa, thank you for having me. I'm sorry you had to witness this. But I won't apologize for standing up for myself. She walked off the stage, her head held high despite the visible trembling in her hands. The audience sat in stunned silence, a few people starting to clap hesitantly before stopping, unsure if applause was appropriate. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the awkward, heavy silence that filled the studio. The stage door closed behind Zendaya with a soft thud that somehow echoed through the entire studio. For several long seconds, nobody moved. The co-hosts sat frozen at the table. The audience remained silent, and even the camera operators seemed unsure whether to keep filming or cut away. It was Whoopi who finally broke the spell. "Well," she said, her voice heavy with exhaustion and disappointment, "that just happened." Joy sat with her arms crossed, her face flushed, jaw set in a stubborn line. "I still don't think I did anything wrong. I asked legitimate questions." Sunny turned to her sharply. "Legitimate questions? Joy, you basically accused her of being fake and asked her what she was hiding. How is that legitimate?" "I was challenging her carefully crafted image," Joy defended. "That's what interviewers do. We don't just lob softballs and let celebrities promote their projects without any real conversation." "There's a difference between challenging someone and attacking them," Alyssa said quietly, still looking shaken. "And that felt like an attack." Joy threw her hands up. "Oh, come on. She's a celebrity. She can handle it. They all act so fragile, but they're making millions of dollars. They can take some heat." Sarah finally spoke, her voice thick with emotion. "She's also a person, Joy. A young woman who has worked incredibly hard to get where she is. And you treated her like she was your enemy from the moment she sat down." "I did not," Joy protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Yes, you did," Whoopi said firmly. "And I've sat next to you for a long time, Joy. I know when you're playing devil's advocate and when you're genuinely being antagonistic." "That was antagonistic." Joy looked genuinely taken aback. "You really think I was out of line?" Whoopi stared at her for a long moment. "Yes, I do. And I think, deep down, you know it too." The audience began to shift uncomfortably, whispers starting to ripple through the crowd. A producer off camera made a cutting motion, signaling they needed to address what had just happened or move on somehow. Whoopi noticed and nodded slightly. "Look," Whoopi said, addressing the cameras directly, "what you just witnessed was a real moment, a difficult moment. And I think it's important that we don't just gloss over it or pretend it didn't happen. We had a guest walk off our show. That doesn't happen often, and it shouldn't happen at all." Joy shifted in her seat, looking like she wanted to speak, but holding back for once. Sunny leaned forward, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "I want to be clear about something. Zendaya came here in good faith. She's been a consummate professional throughout her entire career, and what happened here today was not a reflection of her inability to handle tough questions. It was a response to being disrespected. But we ask tough questions all the time, Joy interjected, unable to stay quiet. We've grilled politicians, we've challenged celebrities, we've had heated debates. Why is this different? Because, Sarah said softly but firmly, there's a way to challenge someone that's productive, and there's a way to challenge someone that's just combative. And you crossed that line. Joy's face hardened. So I'm the villain now? I'm the bad guy because I didn't treat her like she's untouchable? You're not a villain, Alyssa said carefully. But you did handle that poorly. And I think you owe her an apology. The word hung in the air like a grenade. Joy's eyes widened. An apology? For what? For doing my job? For how you did your job, Whoopi clarified. There's nothing wrong with asking challenging questions, but you made it personal. You questioned her character, her authenticity, her right to privacy. That went beyond professional interviewing. Joy sat back in her chair, arms still crossed, her expression a mix of defiance and something that might have been doubt creeping in at the edges. The audience watched, riveted, as the co-host navigated this unprecedented moment live on air. Can I say something? Sunny asked, not waiting for an answer. I think what bothers me most about this is that, Joy, you've been in this industry long enough to know how hard it is for young women, especially young women of color, to be taken seriously. And instead of lifting Zendaya up or having a meaningful conversation with her, you tore her down. I wasn't tearing her down, Joy said, but her voice was quieter now. I was trying to get past the PR talk. By accusing her of hiding something? Sarah challenged. By suggesting her entire image is fake. That's not getting past PR talk. That's just being mean. Joy looked around the table, seeing the unified disapproval from her co-hosts, and something in her expression cracked slightly. I just think that celebrities need to be held accountable. They have so much influence, so much power. We can't just let them control every narrative. Holding someone accountable, Whoopi said slowly, is not the same as being hostile, and what you were doing was hostile. You can ask about someone's choices, their work, their impact, without questioning their fundamental integrity as a person. The studio audience began to applaud tentatively, gaining volume as more people joined in. Joy looked out at them, clearly surprised by their reaction. So you're all saying I was wrong? Joy asked, her voice smaller now, almost vulnerable. We're saying you could have handled that better, Alyssa said diplomatically. Way better. Joy was quiet for a long moment, staring at the table. The cameras continued to roll, capturing every nuance of her expression as she processed the feedback from her colleagues and the reaction from the audience. Finally, she looked up. I still think my questions were valid, she said, but her tone had shifted. But maybe the way I asked them wasn't great. Maybe I came in too hot. Maybe? Sunny raised an eyebrow. Joy sighed heavily. Okay, fine. I came in too hot. I made assumptions, and I probably should have approached the conversation differently. Whoopi nodded slowly. That's a start. But the person who really needs to hear that is Zendaya, not us. Joy looked toward the stage door where Zendaya had exited, her expression conflicted. You think she'd even want to hear from me? I don't know, Whoopi said honestly, but I think you should try, because what happened here today, it's going to be everywhere, and how you respond to it matters. The weight of that reality seemed to settle over Joy. Her shoulders slumped slightly, and for the first time since the confrontation began, she looked genuinely remorseful. Sarah spoke up gently. Joy, I know your heart. I know you're not a cruel person, but today you acted cruelly, and that's not who you want to be. No, Joy admitted quietly. It's not. The audience was completely silent now, watching this moment of reckoning play out. Whoopi reached over and put her hand on Joy's arm. We all have bad days, Whoopi said. We all say things we shouldn't. The question is, what we do about it afterward. Joy nodded slowly. seeming to come to some internal decision. She looked directly into the camera. If Zendaya is watching this, I want to say that I'm sorry. I came into that interview with preconceived notions, and I let them color how I treated you. That wasn't fair, and it wasn't professional. You deserved better. The audience erupted into applause, louder and more sustained this time. The other co-hosts exchanged glances, some surprised, some relieved. But as the applause died down, Sunny added one more thought. You know, I think this whole situation shows something important. We talk a lot about accountability and respect, but we don't always practice it. And when someone like Zendaya stands up for herself, sets a boundary, refuses to be disrespected, we should support that, not criticize her for it. Absolutely, Alyssa agreed. She showed incredible strength and dignity in a really difficult situation. And honestly, I think a lot of people, especially young women, will see what she did today and feel empowered to stand up for themselves too. Whoopi turned to the camera one final time. Look, nobody's perfect. Not us, not our guests, not anyone. But we can all try to do better. We can all try to treat each other with respect, even when we disagree. Especially when we disagree. And today, we fell short of that. I fell short of that by not intervening sooner. So I'm sorry too. The show cut to commercial, but the impact of what had just transpired would reverberate far beyond those few minutes of airtime. The empty chair where Zendaya had sat remained visible in the frame, a stark reminder of the cost of crossing the line between tough questioning and outright disrespect. As the studio lights dimmed for the break, the co-host sat in heavy silence, each processing what had just happened and what it meant for the show, for their relationships with each other, and for the important conversations about respect, boundaries, and accountability that clearly still needed to happen. So, there you have it, one of the most intense moments in talk show history, a confrontation that nobody saw coming and nobody will forget anytime soon. What do you think? Did Zendaya do the right thing by walking off, or should she have stayed and continued the conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe, because we break down moments like this all the time. What would you have done in Zendaya's position?